Dr. Jeremy Faust joins us with more. He's an emergency physician at Brigham and Women's Hospital at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Faust, could we see COVID-19 restrictions reinstated later this year?
Thank you for having me. I think it's possible. Anytime you ease restrictions, which is what we anticipate the CDC might do, it comes at a cost that it makes it harder to avoid the virus. And if hospitals start filling up because we are unable to keep it out of the bodies of people who are most at risk, then yes, we all have to do something to keep our communities safe. So anytime you see it's easier to get the virus, we have to think about what that means downstream.
What's your advice to the fully vaccinated on the COVID variant BA4 and BA5 boosters that could be available as early as next month?
I think the boosters will be an incremental improvement. I don't think that they're going to be game changers. I think they help. We know that they will cause a rise in neutralizing antibodies in our body, which makes it better for our bodies to fight off an infection, avoid getting infected. But I think we've sort of already maximized the protection against severe disease with our previous vaccines and boosters, and also exposure to the virus itself. It's hard to give advice because the implication of an infection today means something very different than it meant a year or two ago, but it's not the same across the spectrum. There's a risk spectrum there. So there's no one answer to everyone. You have to say to yourself, well, how high is my risk of being hospitalized for any reason? If the answer is it's not low, then you want to do a lot to avoid this virus. But for other people, they have sort of moved on because they figured out that, well, if they get it, it won't be a big deal. The problem is it's really hard to predict each case. So my advice is to keep taking this seriously, even though we're not nearly as bad off in terms of every infection's implication as we were in the pre-vaccine era. We're still in a place where we don't know, and that's a very difficult thing for people to wrap their minds around.
The Biden administration has now declared a monkeypox national health emergency. How does that change the response at the local level?
Well, it's a welcome move, and I think the WHO also was wise to do so because it really allows resources to be unlocked. It directs funding in terms of let's get therapeutics looked at in terms of a trial to say what's really working. And it says we're going to get more vaccines to the highest risk groups, and then we can expand that risk. We can expand the availability as we get more and more vaccine stock in supply. So I think what it does is it says, look, this is not going away. We got a little slow out of the gates in terms of our response, but we have the tools that I think can help us maybe catch back up. Another thing that I would like to see happen is that it would actually lead us to more testing. Same problem we had with COVID early on. We don't know the scope of the problem because we don't have enough tests. And so until we have more tests, we really can't know whether we're winning or whether we're catching up or really losing. And I hope that by making it a national emergency, things like more testing becomes easier at the local level.
Things like more testing becomes easier at the local level.
Things like more testing becomes easier at the local level.
Look, the bottom line is that it's difficult to find monkeypox vaccines. So how can people limit the risk?
Well, this virus spreads very differently than COVID. It's spread by intimate, close contact. It's not technically a sexually transmitted disease, but certainly sexual contact gives the virus every opportunity it needs, and that's how it's spreading right now primarily. So we know that in terms of the epidemiology right now, of the documented cases, it's highly enriched in the community of men who sleep with men, have sex with men, but anyone can get this. And we're hearing about a possible outbreak in a preschool in the Midwest, I believe, today, which just goes to show that it's really about close contact. So outside of high-risk communities, we'll start to see if the prevalence of this virus makes it so that everyday people have to start worrying about this. But up until now, it's really been associated with intimate contact. It's not routinely airborne. And but that being said, I think that anytime a virus is sort of making an outbreak, we have an opportunity to learn and to be humble and say, we will keep you updated. But at the moment, this is the best of what we know.
Well, separately, New York State health officials are reporting evidence of the polio virus in wastewater. How concerning from a public health perspective is this development?
You don't want to hear about polio ever in your country or anywhere near you. One thing I will say is isn't it nice that we have wastewater that can tell us what's happening? That's a huge step forward, that we're actually ahead of things and we're not waiting until dozens and dozens of cases. So as a public health person and a person on the front line in emergency departments, I like to know what's coming, and that helps us prepare. Polio is a vaccine preventable illness. Kids get 4 doses of vaccine when they're in the 3 doses in the first year, and then a follow-up dose right around the time of kindergarten, roughly. Let's use this as a reminder to get vaccination rates up. And at the same time, a lot of parents, to bring it back to COVID, they say, well, I'll vaccinate my kid when they go to their routine care. Fine, get them vaccinated for COVID, get them vaccinated for polio on that schedule. When it comes to the greater question for all of us, look, polio is a devastating disease. It can cause paralysis. It can cause all kinds of problems. And we want to limit this. I think that the fact that vaccination rates have over the years crept down has really been a problem. And unfortunately, this is clearly the result of that. At the moment, I think it's a small problem. But because of that problem with decreased vaccinations over time, we really do put ourselves at risk of a greater outbreak.